Good day, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on Windchill Administrator Best Practices. My name is Ifram Poyeng, and we will get underway here. So this is the agenda for today. I am going to do a quick introduction of PDSVISION and myself, go through the concept of digital thread in product development, go through Windchill admin presentations that I've prepared, and then show it to you in the Windchill environment. And right at the end, we will handle the question and answer session. So feel free to start typing your questions in the webinar questions section at any point, and we will attend to those at the end of the presentation. Please note that all attendees are in listen-only mode. So introductions, my name is Ifram Poyeng. I have over 7 years experience on PDC products, specifically Windchill products. I am a certified Windchill implementer and trainer. So a little bit about us being PDSVISION. We are formerly known as Boundary Systems and was acquired by PDSVISION in 2018. So we currently rebranding to PDSVISION US. So we regard ourselves as the technology leaders, being the first PDC global reseller and their preferred service provider. We offer capabilities in consulting, implementation of services, professional training that we offer remotely and on-site as well at customer premises, cloud solution, and also help desk. So if you look at the map here, this is where all our companies or the sub-companies of PDSVISION based. So we have PDC as our main partner, but we also partner with solution companies to make sure that we provide our customers with a comprehensive solution that addresses all their business needs. So as I said, I'll start talking a little bit about just the digital thread concept. So a digital thread is defined as the use of digital tools like Windchill and Creo and representations for design, evaluation, and lifecycle management of a product. So it basically creates traceability and governance of your product data across the whole enterprise. So the way the digital thread works, or how you would normally approach it, is that it's got 4 rings. So the inner ring is basically where you would start with implementing a digital thread. So this is basically where you go in and manage your CAD data, your documentations, and things like requirements management. And you do in that first inner circle. And as your product or your tool sort of matures, you'll then branch out into ring number 2 here, where you start including or using your PLM solution as a change management tool as well. So you go ahead and manage other bill of materials, such as service bill of materials, manufacturing bill of materials, and so on. And also sort of involve your external contributors to have access to your system and also work directly with this one information in this one single source of truth. And again, as the process matures again, you'll then branch out to the or include the 3rd ring in here, where you also manage your manufacturing processes, also integrate the system with other tools such as ERP systems here. And then eventually the 4th and the outer ring, which is the connected ring, Basically, once your product is out in the field operating, you're going to be able to sort of monitor it, monitor how it behaves, monitor to see if it is being used properly, and then all the feedback information that's coming from the product in the field is then brought in and applied to the next generation of that product. Okay, and then the digital thread is basically making sure that all this information is linked together as it matures from as designed to as built till as maintained once the product is out. You want to make sure that all that information is linked, and so that you know if you're someone who has to service this product, you're working with the accurate information at all material times. And also making sure that you basically leverage the upstream data in the downstream processes, and make sure that you leverage that information so that you basically don't duplicate work or have information in different systems. So it basically allows you to have that one source of truth in that sense. Right, jumping back to our topic of today, I want to start off at the Windchill architecture, just talk a little bit about the Windchill architecture here. And then, so this that you're seeing on the screen right now is the basic or the minimum requirements or required components to be able to have Windchill set up and working. You basically need a database server, an administrative directory, which is normally referred as an LDAP, or popular known as an LDAP, and then you need the Windchill application itself. So the Windchill application would have a web server that would basically render information out to the client. And I mentioned the database server, so you can have a database server as a separate server to the application server, which we as PDSVISION normally recommend to our customers. But you can also have it on one single server, say a monolithic type of setup. And then there's also optional or additional components that you can add to the system to sort of assist you and makes it easy for some of the components or the processes to work in Windchill. So I'll dig deep into each of these components in the next slides. Starting with the database. Starting with the database here. So the database is normally used to store the Windchill metadata or the metadata about the Windchill object. But there's other instances where you have a very small sort of Windchill community of 1 or 2 users, and you can also store physical data in the database as well. So in database terms, they call that blobs. That is basically where you goes and stores files, your documents, your CAD information directly into the your database system. And this could either be an Oracle database or a SQL database. Windchill support Windchill supports the 2 systems. Okay. And so the problem with storing the actual CAD data in the database is that it causes the database to grow very huge and very fast. And once the database is quite huge, it's very difficult to manage and actually maintain. So how we normally set it up is we would push the physical data, so the CAD and the documents, we'll push those into a vault, and then in that vault folder, the vault folder will normally be a folder in your server, in a Windchill server, or it could be on a different server. So it pushes that data in there, and that data is actually encrypted in that vault folder. And the Windchill database basically then stores only the metadata about that data. And then again, the database and the vault data, it is it is in sync. So if you modify a file, it would update both the database as well as the vault metadata. Then the next one here is the administrative LDAP. So the first purpose of this is to provide users and group administration. Okay, so this is where the users, the groups in Windchill resides, and then this is what also Windchill uses to authenticate the users that logs into the Windchill system. The second purpose is to store the application-specific configuration. So things like organization name and sort of organization attributes that goes with that organization. The next one being the Windchill application server itself. And the application server has got two main components to it. It is the server manager and the method server as well. So the way it typically works is when you request something in Windchill, so you're searching for some information or you opening a CAD file in Windchill, it normally sends that request to the server manager, and the server manager takes that request and decide which method server to send it to. So with the method server, you could have multiple method servers, or you could have a method server and a background method server. So a method server would basically process those type of requests where you're searching for information or you're opening something in Windchill or you're creating a user. Those are sort of activities that are handled in the method server servlet. And then the background method server sort of handles the processes. So if you create a process plan, not a process plan, sorry, if you create a promotion process, that sort of process, it is handled in the background method server. And things like Windchill queues or publishing, those are also handled in the Windchill background server. And then as part of the Windchill application, you also get the web server, which is of type Apache. So this basically renders the page, static contents of the page, as well as the dynamic content to the client through any web browser, of course. The next one here is the enterprise directory. So enterprise directory here allows you to link Windchill directly with your Active Directory, your organization's Active Directory. So if you want to manage users only in the common place like an Active Directory, you can set Windchill to search for users directly in an enterprise directory. So even if there's a new user in the company, IT creates them in the enterprise or in the Active Directory, and then give them access to the Windchill group, the AD or the Active Directory. And then when you give them access to Windchill context like a product or a library, you'll then simply just search for that user. And then it basically queries or searches the AD for that user and then assign them access. Then they basically use the same username and password that they use to log into the Windows computer at work. And then the enterprise LDAP here will then handle only the external users that you want to access the Windchill system. And then while I'm still on here, even if you're not managing even if you don't want to manage all the users in the AD, you still want to manage them in the or create them and manage them in the Windchill LDAP directory, but you want to use the AD to authenticate. There's a setting that you can actually add in the Apache or the HTTP server configuration to only use Active Directory for authentication, but the users will still be created in the Windchill directory. Then the next one is the indexing server here. So this basically indexes contents as you create them, and then it indexes everything about that context. So the metadata, or every metadata about that particular object that you add into Windchill, as well as the contents of that. So if I'm saving a Word document into Windchill with some content information in there, that information is also indexed. So I can simply search for that document using any word that I remember from the content of that document. So if it is indexed, it will definitely find that word, or find return the object that contains that word in its context or content. And the mail server, so mail server is an optional system here. Basically delivers an email message to you. So if you are assigned a specific task, you need to approve a promotion process. If your system is set for your company's mail server, it will automatically send you an email as you get assigned to do these activities in Windchill. And it's a very nice thing if you are an administrator, because what it does is, if it is set up to the email server, what it does is, if there's any issue in the Windchill system, if for an example, Vault has run out of space and Windchill automatically sets Vault to read only, system will automatically send you as the administrator an email to say check Vault, or check Vault is about to run out of space. Then you can be proactive and fix it before it actually get to the point where it locks the Vault. And the last component on the list here being the visualization worker. So this basically generates a lightweight version of your model, of any CAD model, creates a lightweight version that can be used and opened by non-CAD users. So if we need to, if we viewers, we don't necessarily need Creo parametric, for an example, to open up the models. We can use the viewer like Creo View to open up models, mark those models up, red lines, and then save those red lines back into Windchill. So that sort of data that you can open in the Creo View, it is actually generated using the visualization worker. And if you are a big company with a lot of Windchill users, you might want to add additional or multiple CAD workers that Windchill can basically split the publishing work amongst them, so that you don't have a backlog of the published jobs in your system. Because what that also does is it impacts on the Windchill performance as well. And just while I'm still on there, is on the visualization, is you can create a visualization for every CAD tool. So NX, CATIA, SolidWorks, you are able to create a visualization for that could be easily open in Creo View. And then just information on the help and documentation. So if you go to support.pdc.com and you log in with your Windchill or with your PDC credentials, it takes you to the page where you can basically search PDC's knowledge base for anything. So if you come across an error in your Windchill system, you cannot check in because of a specific error, you can easily come here, type in the error as is in the search box here and search for it. Then we'll give you the results with a couple of articles that you can go in and investigate. And the next thing is, if you're looking for documents on the very same page, under the popular task panel, if you're looking for a specific document, say I'm looking for an installation document for Windchill 12, or I'm looking for a matrix on the Windchill 12 system, I can go into this browse document, specify the details, what version I'm looking for, and what document type I'm looking for, and then search. And the search will return only the results specific to that version and for the document that you actually searching for. And then in Windchill system itself, You also have a help center. So if you click on the quick links menu help, you are able to access the Windchill Help Center from there. So every Windchill system would have this Windchill Help Center, and then you can search for anything also in there that you're looking for. And on every Windchill page, you'll see this when we do the demo. On every Windchill page, there will always be a question mark that helps sign for question mark. If you click on that question mark, it takes you to the search page or the results page about that Windchill page that you are on. Then some Windchill performance information that you normally use. So if you have Windchill performance issues, Windchill is very slow, it's taking long for people to check in information, you can look at under this article here. It will guide you on what sort of things you need to do to your Windchill system to make sure that it performs better, to give users better experience. And the other thing is with the database as well. So normally with the customers that we host in our environment, we normally, as part of the backup, run the Windchill statistics scripts on there. And what that does is it gathers certain information that we include in the script, and then based on the results of that information, I can see if Windchill database performance is deteriorating or not. And based on also those metrics, I can take those and search for database-related information in Windchill Support Center, and be able to get information about how to improve performance in my database system. And then on here, I've got articles on where to get that, or articles on how to gather the statistics for Oracle, as well as Microsoft SQL Server. And the other one here is what we call the WCA, Windchill Configuration Assistance. So in the previous versions of Windchill, so 10.2 going backwards, this used to be a separate utility that once you've installed Windchill, or once you've done the upgrade, you have to manually run, and then it will ask you certain questions or certain configurations questions, and then you then basically go in and supply those values. So with Windchill 11.0 going forward, this utility is bundled in the installation, and what it does is it automatically set the preferences or performance preferences for your server automatically, and then it does that based on your server specs. So it looks at the memory, it looks at the CPU, and based on that, it set what it thinks would be the best performance for your Windchill system. And if you've done things like the upgrades, it also looks at RAM, CPU, and so on, but it also looks at the users, the number of users that are already in the system, and then based on that, it would set things like the memory that it needs to set for the Windchill method server, for an example. So that is the article, just on information on that. So normally, if you're not happy with the settings that is already applied, you can always go back and modify that using the Windchill Shell X Configuration Manager. And the one important one here is the server status. So I use this a lot. I find this as a system administrator, this is very useful. It's the server status. And so in the server status here, it basically gives you the health of your Windchill system. So how is it performing? And then in there's additional monitoring tools that you can also use to monitor your Windchill system. For an example, things like the log file viewer here. So normally when Windchill goes down or there's an issue with Windchill, you normally go into the Windchill server itself and look at the method server logs or the background method server logs. So this gives you those method server logs from the Windchill UI itself. So if you go into the log viewer, you can basically search for sort of logs you're looking for, and also timeframes can also be specified when you're looking for those. And it's exactly the same logs that you normally get from the Windchill server logs folder. And the next one is the log events. So from here, I can pull some history events. So if for instance, I want to look for any errors in my logs, I can use this and then specify an event as an error, or as a warning, or as an information. And then based on those, it basically pulls that information from your log files and get that information out. Right. And if you get complaints from users that, okay, I'm querying or I'm searching for the 10 data, it's taking long to do that, and then you're looking at the Windchill server side, you don't see any issues there, you might want to come and look at the SQL query that it is doing to the database. So check that and see how long it takes. If it's a small query, it should normally take milliseconds to query the data from the database. But if that's taking too long, you might want to dig deep and do maintenance or statistics from the Windchill server, Windchill database server, to check what could be causing the queries to take that long. So what I've seen before with that was mostly the reason for that was if the Windchill was set up to stop blobs. So it wasn't set to push the files, the CAD files into the vault. So it was pushing everything into the database. And the issue with that was it would have to query for the metadata that it's searching for, and also go look for the actual file in the database and pull it down. Yeah, so then the fix for that was to revault everything and move all the physical files from the database onto the vault, and that improved the speed quite a bit. And the next thing I want to talk about here is the queue monitor. So on the queue monitor, so if you, for instance, with a workflow, it would add queues on the workflow queues here. For an example, that workflow user worker queue, this is what would actually queues or pulls the workflow tasks. Or if you publishing something, the queue for that publishing will also be added in here. So time to time, say weekly, as an administrator, you need to come into this and check if there's any failures in the queue entries here. And if there's any failures, you need to dig into that particular queue and see what could be causing them. Sometimes it's something that you'd find that it's failed because it had already completed, or it's already past the time. So if you send someone an email and the email queue failed, but they've already completed the task. So in those sort of ones that fails, you might want to go in and delete them so that it clears the queue here a little bit. Yeah, and then also on the monitoring here, you can also see how many, or what is the total entries for a specific queue. For an example, a publisher queue here that publishes the clear view files. You want to look at what's the total entry and what is actually waiting in the waiting to be processed here. Sometimes you'd find that the queue is actually not moving because the worker is not running, for an example, or because the background method server has stopped running. So yeah, it's important to come in here and do a couple of refreshes just to see if the waiting entry is actually decreasing here. And if it's not decreasing, you might want to go in and obviously investigate that. And the next one here is on the indexing. So if you indexing data, there is indexing administrator in the Windchill utilities, and then it basically indexes the objects based on types. So I can decide and go and say, okay, within all my data, I want to go in and just index as the first indexing types, just the EPM documents, then start indexing just for that. Or I can go ahead and do a bulk indexing, and with that bulk indexing, it will just index everything in this list. And then also, if there is any failed entries, show in there. And then if there is failed entries, you might want to go into the indexing logs and check what could be the cause for that failure. And again, the important thing here is while it's indexing, you also want to check the remaining objects here. And again, you might have to refresh a couple of times to see if this number is actually decreasing. And if it's not moving, it might be that the indexing service has stopped, or for some reason Windchill restarted, and then the indexing just got stuck. So in those cases, you might want to try start the bulk indexing again, or start indexing by type. If it fails, in the logs it will tell you exactly why it has failed. But definitely the entries that failed, you would want to go into the logs and investigate. And then now for the shared workers, this is the cases that comes in quite a lot, where Windchill is not publishing or the publishing has failed. We deal with this sort of cases on a daily basis. So in this example here, you've noticed that for that particular worker server, it has actually failed, and the status there says failed to start. Most of the time when it says failed to start, it is normally because of two things. One is the port that the worker server actually uses to look for the Windchill server, which is normally port 5600. It's either it cannot access that port due to maybe firewall or Windows firewall. So normally for that, I'll normally go into the worker server itself and then try to telnet into that port. And most of the time, it would be that. The second reason why it would fail to start would be the Windchill license. Sorry, the Creo license. So if the Creo license or a CAD license on a CAD worker has expired, or it couldn't access the license server, the Creo license server, it would fail to start. Then you need to go in and look at those. And the other place to look when the job are failing is on the job status. So on the job status there, if you switch it to failed jobs, so you've got a couple of categories here. You've got failed job ready, which are the jobs that are waiting to process, executing jobs, which are the ones that are running, and the successful jobs. So if you switch it to failed jobs, it basically gives you the details of why it had actually failed at the bottom here. And if I zoom into this one in particular here, it says it failed to retrieve a specific part. And it gives you that error there. So if you don't know this, you normally copy this error and then go to PDC support center and then just paste it in, obviously without the part number, and then you immediately get the sort of results with things to check that might be causing that issue. And if you're looking at this one, it could be that this model, there's some issue with the geometry where things couldn't regenerate properly, and due to that, it cannot open it without any errors in Creo. So in that case, you might want to go and try using the Creo or a CAD system in the worker, try open that particular part and see if it opens without any errors. If it opens with errors, you need to fix those errors before you can republish this job. The other cause for this failure could be that a user Creo system was upgraded to the latest version of Creo, and we forgot to update the Creo on the worker. So the Creo cannot open the latest version of that file because it was modified with the later version of Creo. Yeah, so that's one of the things that could cause that one there to fail. Some additional information could be found in the worker server itself. When the worker is set up, there's a folder called the pro_e_setup. So in there, you get the normal Creo files, the std.out, the trail.txt that you can look at and investigate. And then for the worker itself, you get the helper, the worker helper, and then there's another one that's called the monitor that you can actually open and look at what could be the cause for your worker not working or for your worker not processing jobs. Okay, the next thing is just to talk about the participant administrators and policy administrator. So we always recommend that when users leave the company, you remove them from the system or deactivate them. And the main reason for that is you want to free up that user's license from the system. And again, the other reason is you want to make sure that they no longer have access to your system. And so there's a couple of ways to deactivate. You can completely delete the user from the system, which I normally don't recommend because the user might come back to the company, and we want to enable that user again in Windchill. So the way I normally do it is either reset the password, so change the password to something else, or change the username. So I normally would change the username and just append it with the deactivated user or something at the end of the username. Then the other thing that I also recommend is when you setting up permissions or access control for your Windchill users, always set that up on the group, not the users' entities. So always set it at the groups level or the roles level. And the other thing is when you assigning the users to context, to products and libraries, do that with groups as well. And the reason for that is if this user is part of 15 products, they've got access to 15 products, and you want to remove access for them from those 15 products. If you have assigned them as users to those products, you have to go through all those products and remove the access. But if it's a group, you only remove that user from the group, and it will be removed from all the other product context or any other context they had access to. And the other one I want to talk about is the licensing. So on the utility side, you've got the license management, and there's a lot of things that you can do under the license management. So it gives you the license information, basically being all the licenses that you have in Windchill. And then from the license groups column here, I can simply click on that link, and then it takes me directly to that group. And then I can, from there, just add a user or assign a user to that license group. So it basically gives me the total quantity of the licenses, and then the available quantity there, and also when those would expire in here. And the other thing on the reports, I can also pull a report in a certain period of that report to see how many users are using a specific license and how many times have they used it, and which users. So it basically gives you a report similar to this one here. So it tells me here that I have 9 registered users in my Windchill system, and then the recently active users, 4 users in this case, and then the usage history here, how many have been used, and also the users that are actually using these licenses. So if I zoom this in, so I can tell from here that this user here has been using npm link, Windchill PDM link, and I can also see how many times they have actually used those licenses, when they first access them, and when last did they access that licenses. So it helps with reporting, but especially if you are your licenses are up for renewal, you want to run such a report and see if you need to renew all the licenses, or you need to purchase more licenses. And lastly is with the Windchill backups here. So we recommend that you do Windchill database backup daily. And then there's 2 types of backups that we do. There's a hot backup. And so hot backup is the one that you do while the database service is still running. The challenge with that is you could get inconsistencies on the data itself, as the database will be changing, or there will be requests to the database as you are backing it up. And the other thing is that database could be out of sync with the vault data. And the cold backup is where you just stop everything and then do the database backup. And the benefit obviously to that is you don't need to worry about vault and database being out of sync, or the data itself being not being consistent. And then the LDAP database backup as well. We also recommend that's done daily. So if users are changing passwords and then there's new users being added to the system, you might want to make sure that you always have the LDAP backup for that. We also recommend the backup of the whole Windchill folders and configurations to be done daily as well. If you can't afford to do them daily because of maybe space or something like that, every time the properties change or a customization has been applied, it would be best to go in and do a backup after that. You don't need to do a backup for indexing, so this is very quick to recreate and re-index. And then you would also do a file vault backup as well. All right, I will go into the Windchill system and just show you where in the Windchill system you can find this utilities. So to be able to do this, you need to be logged in as the administrator. And then you need to go into the site utilities. So in the site utilities here, I'll start with the help. So to get to the Windchill Help Center, you basically just click on the quick links, help, and then the Windchill Help Center. And then this will take you to the Windchill Help Center page. I use this a lot. I've been using Windchill for more than 7 years, but I still time to time go look for something in the Windchill Help Center. Yeah, and then the other thing that I had mentioned was this question mark or help icon here. So this, if I click on that help, it basically takes me to the Help Center page about the utilities page, about the page that I'm at. So if I quickly just go to the calendar management here at the top, and then I click on that Help Center icon under the calendar, it will take me to the Help Center about the Windchill calendar. About the Windchill calendar. Okay. And then, yeah, so then where I want to start is on the server statuses here. So if you go to site utilities and then under system administrator, you've got the server status. So if you click on that, you would notice on this server at this stage, there is no one that's logged in. But if there is any other user that's logged into the system, they would actually show in there. So I'm just going to quickly log in a different window. Just look into this server quickly. So I've logged into the system in the window here, and I'm going to go now and refresh the server status page. And once it's refreshed, you'll notice that under current active users there's one user that's currently in the system. So normally, if you just before you restart the server, you want to go in and check if there's any users that are currently logged in, and if they are, you want to go and run a report to see who is logged into the server. So the only downside to this is if I click on it, it doesn't really show you who's logged into the system. It just gives you a graph about how many users have logged into the system over time. Okay, and then the other things that we can also see here, I can see that my background method server has been up for about 3 days, and then I've got method server that has been up for about 8 days. So this tells me that at some stage my background method server had stopped. And then again, I can see from here that I only have one method server and one background server. If you had more method servers, it will also show in here. And I can also see that they haven't deadlocked at this stage. They're still behaving fine. And I can also see how much memory is it using. So you normally assign memory to these files using that WCA configuration file that I've shown you. So you can set memory that it should use, the physical memory size that it should use. For example, set it to use 4 gigabytes out of the server memory, 4 gigs for background, 4 gigs for method server. So this sort of shows you how much of that it is using. If this number starts to go down, it might impact the server performance and the user experience. In that case, you might want to go in and see if you can increase the memory that these two services use. But then the other thing is, if you're looking at this, these two are not actually using too much of that memory. But if the memory runs out on the physical memory on the server runs out, Windchill will stop because there's no memory on the server, so it basically stop the Windchill service. So it's really important to see how much memory the Windchill server is actually using, and then compare it with this one here. So for an example, if mine is not using too much of memory, even if I've got all the users logged into my Windchill system, I can always go back and then just reuse the memory that this tool has been assigned, and give that back to the Windchill system to use, the Windchill server to use. Other things that we can see in here is the at the very bottom here, it shows me that this is my main server, and then it is available 100%. So if that number starts going down to like 90%, 80%, you need to start investigating why the server is not fully 100% available on there. It might be impacted by how the database server is responding, and yes, you might want to look at those two and see what could be the cause. The other thing is the monitoring tools over here. So if I go into the monitoring tools page, so this is where I can access things like the method server logs. So from the log page there, I can decide if I want to just pull in the Windchill logs, or I want to pull in the Windchill logs and the Apache or the web server logs as well. So in this case, I'm just going to pull in the Windchill logs. You can also search for a certain thing that might be contained in that log. So if I want to search for a specific error message, I can put it in there and then just search for it. And also specify the age in days. In this case, I can say I wanna just see the logs that were generated that are a day old or a day and less old, and then search for that. And you'll notice that it returns the method server logs as well as the server manager logs. So I can simply click on the method server log here, and it gives me exactly what you would see in the normal Windchill logs. And in here I can see that there's a couple of information that's been reported in my log here. If there's any errors, I can see there was an error there, and I can basically go and investigate that without having to RDP or remote logging into the Windchill server to look for that. The next thing on here that you can also look at is that just the queries that were made to the database. You can specify the time over there, then search, and this lists all the queries that has been made to the database, and it also shows me which service actually queried this. If I click on this first one here, it then basically gives me a stack trace of that query, and then I can also see the statement that was used to query that. And then the other thing that is also very important here is I can see how long it took to actually query that. And if it was just a simple query and then it took over 2 seconds to query that, I'll definitely need to go in and check why it took that long to query for that data. That is for the server manager. The next one I want to look at this is the queue manager here. So in the queues here, if I sort it by the entries, I can see these are all the entries for my publisher queue. So in this case, I can see nothing has actually failed for this publisher queue. Nothing is waiting in the entry, but I have a total of over 3,000 entries in there. So this tells me that these are all the successful entries. So if I go into this queue, I will actually see that this have actually completed. So this was successful. What I might want to do, because they were all successful, I might want to go in and clear all those queues. Make sure that I remove them to keep my queues nice and clean here, and to make sure that it doesn't impact on the processing of the other queues. The other way to actually clean out the publisher queues that are successful is to create a job scheduler that basically runs at a certain time interval and then looks for the successful jobs, and then if they are there, it basically cleans them or removes from the queue. It also obviously clears the database entries for those queues as well. But again, if I look at the failed entries here, you can see, for an example, for that user workflow queue, the 2 entries that were there actually failed. So I can go in, look at those, and then click on the links for those. So it then takes me to the actual workflow of this, and I can interrogate and see why this actually failed. And I can see from the metadata here that it was actually terminated. And from the activities as well, I can see this were actually terminated by the user on here. So I can also check what was the issue with the second one. It's also stored. Yeah, but I can also see there that this was also terminated by the user. So in that case, I can basically go in and say, okay, this doesn't, we don't have to resend this or resubmit this. We can basically just delete them to clean up the queue. Okay, that was for the queue management. I am going to now go to the indexing administration here. Just sort it by processed. Yes, so if I'm looking at this one here, I can see I have about 7,000 objects that's been processed, but I can also see that I still have a couple of those that are remaining. Nothing has failed, which is positive. And so if I refresh this page, I see it still has about 136 that are still remaining. So it is not decreasing. So it's either my indexing is not working, or there's something wrong with the service itself. So I'm going to go and just do a bulk or start a bulk indexing for that. Or I can go for a specific type and just right click and say start indexing the slot here. And I've got about 46 there under EPM documents. If I refresh, you'd notice those has been indexed now, and I've got about 90 now that's remaining. So for those ones, I can basically go and just start the bulk indexing for those. And then you now notice that they are actually going down. The number is actually going down. And the last thing I want to look at here is with the worker agent. So this is the worker agent here. So I'm just going to go ahead and start this one up. If it fails, it would notify me in the status here that it failed to run. Otherwise, if it started successfully, it will also let me know that this worker here is actually available. So that will take some time to basically get that started. So while that's still running, okay, there we go. So yeah, so now it tells me that this is now available. So this means that this publisher here can actually accept jobs and publish them. If I want to look at the job monitor, I basically go to quick links here, WVS job monitor. And then on here, I'm just going to set it to all. So I see already here, there's a job that's basically failed. And if you go to the status information here, if I can try zoom in here. If I go to the status information here, I can see that the reason why it's failed is because the Windchill lessons is because of the Windchill lessons validation. So the user that was actually processing this job, it is not licensed. It's not a licensed user. That is why this particular job failed. So you then go in and check. So in this case, it was the site administrator. I can go and see if the site administrator is licensed. And then if they are licensed, if they're not, I'll license them and come back here and resubmit that job. So this is normally very detailed to tell you exactly what the issue is. If it is not detailed, you can always go to the method server log or background method server log to go at the details of that. Okay, so yeah, that is all I wanted to show you in this particular webinar. I am going to go and check if there is any questions at this stage. And then in the meantime, I'll put up my contact details there here. If you have any technical questions post this webinar, you can email them directly to me, ipoyeng@pdsvision.us. Any sales queries, sales@pdsvision.us. Or you can visit our website, PDSVISION.com, or our YouTube channel, PDSVISION.com, PDSVISION on YouTube. So if you need to revisit this webinar at some stage, it will be uploaded into this YouTube channel at the later stage as well. So I'm just trying to get to the questions here. Care worker failed to start can also be usually by hungry or process on the care worker. Oh yes. So what sometimes happens is once the job has been processed and your windshield worker is set to close. After that, it would normally so sometimes the Creo process itself won't close, and the next time you try to republish, when Windchill or Creo try to start up, that running process sort of blocks it from running. So then in that case, what you normally do is you go into the worker server and just make sure that you end or you close out those Creo processes that are running. Thank you so much, Scott, for that. Okay, I'm just trying to look to see if there's any additional questions on the list. Okay, I don't see any additional questions in there. And as I said, I mean, you can always reach out to me directly. My email address is up there. So at this stage, I would like to thank you for joining today's webinar and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.